Welcome back to the last edition of this second chapter of your sociology book, second PUC, Social Inequality, Exclusion and Inclusion. As we have already finished the chapter in the last class, in this class we are just going to take up some important concepts and we are going to summarize the entire chapter for you. It's a long chapter, so the structure that we are going to give you is going to help you to understand the whole chapter in a glance, and we will be discussing some important questions plus their answers. The only thing is, we are not giving you complete answers. These answers are only indicative of the answers that you have to think and write for yourself. So, please read the chapter well, as I always say, and now we begin. It's a summary of the entire chapter. So, we talked about social inequality. What is social inequality? It is basically inequality of opportunity in society, which is based on unequal access to social resources. And this inequality leads to discrimination, which leads to exclusion. So, this is the link. Social inequality leads to discrimination, and discrimination leads to exclusion of certain groups. Over a period of time, the group that was deprived of social opportunities and was discriminated against becomes excluded. Their exclusion prevents them to participate actively in the national development, because they are no more a part of the mainstream national activity or the national development. So, the government at state and national level devise policies and forms acts and laws to bring them back in the mainstream. So, this is what we have seen in the case of caste, this is what we have seen in the case of tribe and other backward classes. These are the basically the excluded group from the society, which have been tried to bring back in the mainstream with the help of certain laws and certain acts and some other changes in the society. So, the structure of the chapter goes like this: social inequality, discrimination and social exclusion. Exclusion we have taken, which is based on caste. Then we have gone to meaning of the caste, the definitions, features of the caste. 6 features are there. The changes in the caste system pre-independence and post-independence, concept of dominant caste and nature of dominant caste. I hope you remember all these points which are there in your book also. So, we will move on. So, again we have tried to make this flow chart for you. So, social inequality leads to discrimination, discrimination leads to social exclusion. Now, we have taken caste, then exclusion based on caste, meaning of the caste, definitions, features of the caste, 6 features, and changes in the caste system pre and post independence. Then the concept of dominant caste, which was given by M.N. Srinivas, and the nature of the dominant caste. So, all the points are there in your book. Please see them to formulate your answer. So, let us take up the backward classes in India, which was comprised by scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and other backward classes. So, when we took up a scheduled caste, it has the problems or disability of scheduled caste, which were grouped into 3 titles, which was social problems or social disabilities, economic disability and religious disability. Then we came to the tribe. So, first we defined what the tribe was, then these are some of the changing concepts of the tribe. So, again there are 4 points: tribe as a self-contained unit, tribe as a political division, tribe as a race, tribe and scheduled tribe. Then there were demographic aspects of scheduled tribe and there were geographical distribution of Indian tribe. So, according to the zones or the parts of India, these tribes are divided into 3 zones. First one is north and northeastern zone, then we have central zone and then we have southern zone. Then we discussed the problems of Indian tribes. In that We discussed how the tribes are geographically isolated, and that's why they are not able to reach to the developmental process that is happening in the mainstream society. And cultural problems, here we discussed how their culture while being infiltrated by the outside forces is getting contaminated. So, they are no more enjoying or no more seeing the indigenous culture they were so proud of, or they were it was such a fixed characteristic feature of this particular section, that is Indian tribes. Then there were social problems of Indian tribes. So, they were again related to the isolation of the Indian tribes and how they are distanced from the mainstream society. Then there were economic problems, as they are away from the mainstream society. They are completely dependent on the land, and the land was also a part of their, it was being alienated from tribal hands to non-tribals. And then there was a problem of indebtedness, that they were always under some loans because of lack of monetary resource. So, they were always depending on certain loans, and they were not able to come out of those payment of those loans. So, they were perpetually indebted. Then there was exploitation in forestry operations. Again, there you saw that how their land was taken in the name of some kind of developmental process, and it was given to some state arrangements or some outside agencies, where this particular land, their own forest, was given to other hands, and they were working as agricultural laborers in their own land without being properly remunerated for their labor. Then, as they were already dependent on the land, still they used the primitive methods of cultivation, which obviously did not bring them proper yields to look after their families and other needs of survival. After that, there were educational problems. Education did not reach them, plus the kind of education that was running in the entire country was, they were not able to identify with that kind of educational system. So, obviously, it did not reach their society, it did not reach their makeup, and they were deprived of this education aspect also. Then there was exploitation by money lenders, and there was health problems, because they are susceptible to many diseases, as they are not open to wide society outside. So, health problems also and is very rampant in their society, and there is lack of health facility in their vicinity. So, considering their problems, there were various policies that were devised. They were called, they were come under tribal welfare. So, there was this policy of isolation, the policy of assimilation, and the policy of integration. So, what was the policy of isolation? The policy of isolation was basically to keep them where they are. So, there we had discussed, there was some sociologist or thinker who talked about creating national park for them. So, which was this particular idea was not taken in very kindly, as it was taken as if they are being equated with animals. So, animals have zoo, animals have national parks. So, the idea was dismissed of keeping them isolated. Then the policy of assimilation. Here there were important sociologists such as G.S. Ghurye was a part of it, and they talked about assimilating these tribals into some kind of this already prevalent culture or cult. For example, G.S. Ghurye talked about tribes being backward Hindus. So, they should be assimilated into the Hindu stream. And there were Christian missionaries which wanted to convert them into and assimilate them into Christianity. Then the third policy came as the policy of integration. This policy was considered to be the most balanced amongst the three, and this policy was advocated by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, where they talked about bringing some kind of balance in their life, keeping their isolation kind of intact, plus bringing some kind of development features from the outside world also, but not touching their privacy too much. So, this was the idea of this policy of integration. Then we talked about other backward classes, which was comprised of these 3 sections: SC, that is scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and the third part was OBC, which is other backward classes. So, this basically was a class which was neither scheduled or listed in scheduled caste, nor it was listed in scheduled tribe. So, those who were left out were taken in this particular third group, which was other backward classes. So, the problem of other backward classes was that they constituted an indefinite, abstract and unorganized category, because other backward classes could be anyone. Those who were educationally backward or economically backward, they were taken as the other backward classes. So, there were many groups which claimed to be in this category, but there was no kind of there was no unification of the idea or of the identity. So, it never came up as a one particular class or a group. It remained very unorganized. So, they were politically unorganized in the sense they were not able to come up as one particular group, because of which they could not come out to be as a pressure group to pressurize the government or the other agencies to forward their case or advocate their cause or concern to the higher authorities. So, their problems remained at their level only. Many of their problems did not get solved because they were politically also unorganized. Now, we talked about what was the criteria of backwardness. So, anybody can claim to be backward in order to take the benefits being offered by the government. So, the government had to set up some committees which could look into this criteria of backwardness. So, the first committee that was set in was Kalelkar committee, and the second one was Mandal commission. So, Kalelkar committee also you can get into the detail that they proposed certain numbers of backward classes, which was and proposed some kind of reservation, around 68% of reservation, which was dismissed by the government at that time. So, then came Mandal commission, another commission was set up by the government. So, what was the Mandal commission's criteria of backwardness? Again we can group them into 3, which is social criteria, educational criteria and economic criteria. And there is some statistics is given and some calculations are given. 25% above the state level, they should be backward. Like that, they have to calculate very, very precisely in order to bring them into this particular group. It is not arbitrary, it is not based on some kind of, it is not based on personal choices. It is very standardized way of deciding whether this particular group can be clubbed into backward class or not. So, educational criteria was also there. As you remember, you can just go through those points, that educationally also they should be backward, and there should be many dropouts from primary years to 15 years of age. They should not be having education, there should be and many dropouts also. So, just check for those percentages to understand this concept well. And then there was this economic criteria again. So, how much they are earning, how many people in the family should be earning, how much should be their income annually. So, it was about 1 lakh, it should be less than rupees 1 lakh annually. Then also they will be included in this criteria of backwardness. So, go through these points very carefully and the percentage that is given into deciding how we decide these particular criteria. So, these were the basic points of the entire chapter. Now, we will be revising certain questions with their answers, so that you get a good grasp of the concepts used, and it will be a good way to revise the entire chapter. But please understand, as we have already mentioned, these answers are only indicative. They are not the exhaustive answers. So, to get the complete answers, you have to refer back to your book. So, now we take up questions which deal with 5 or 10 marks. So, first question, these are very common questions which come. So, you should be aware of the concepts and how to write the answers. So, explain the social inequality and social exclusion. So, it has come for 5 marks. So, you should see if it is of 5 marks, how many lines you should be writing and how much you should be explaining. It should not be more than a page or less than a page. So, you can describe what is social inequality and how it leads to social exclusion. You have to talk about discrimination, you have to talk about prejudices. Then next question is define caste and explain the characteristics of caste system. Very, very important question. You can see it has come so many times. Very recently it has come. So, again you can have a question based on 5 marks or it can be based on 10 marks. Depending on the marks that have been asked for, you should be explaining the answer. So, the detail of the answer will depend on the numbers or number of the question, how many marks are allotted. So, you have to write the characteristics of the caste system, which can be, there are 6 characteristics that you have to mention. What are those characteristics? I hope you remember. They were about segmental division of society, hierarchy, restriction on feeding or social intercourse, and there was civil and religious disability and privileges. Restriction on occupation was the 5th point, and 6th point was restriction on marriage. Now, another question is explain the changes in the caste system during the British rule. So, here you have to mention the pre-independent period. Again, it can be of 5 marks or it can be of 10 marks, and so very recently it has appeared in your question paper 2019. So, again you have to take into consideration whether it is of 5 or 10 marks. Accordingly you have to write. So, I hope you remember what were the changes in the pre-independence India. So, what the changes that were brought in by during the British rule. So, they were universalistic legal system, there we discussed about the laws. So, there was one Caste Disability Removal Act, there was Hindu Widow Remarriage Act, there was Special Marriage Act, and there were other legislations. So, you have to discuss them briefly. If it is a 10 marks question, you have to discuss them, otherwise just mention them if it is a 5 mark question. Then you have universal English education, which was it was more about creating professionals. So, caste system got dwindled during that time. And then you have social reform movements which were also there. So, you have to mention those organizations that were working to bring about equality in the society. So, you have Brahmo Samaj, you have Arya Samaj, Prarthana Samaj, you know, all those organizations. Now, there was you have to mention again the impact of new formations. So, what were those new formations in the society? In the instead of caste, there were capitalists and industrialists. So, it was an industrial society now. So, that also you have to mention. And then 5th point was impact of freedom struggle. So, you have to mention how the freedom struggle was a key feature to bring about a national identification. The kind of idea of nationality came about for the first time, and which also was a big blow on the caste system. And then there was a point of industrialization and urbanization. These were the new changes that came up during that time, pre-independence India. And this industrialization and urbanization created a situation where you could not care about the caste system, as you had to work together in cohesion. So, these are the points that you have to mention. Now, if the question comes on the changes, explain the changes in the caste system during the post-independent period. So, you have to talk about what changes came after the independent India. So here again you have to mention that there was only modification in the caste system, but caste system still prevailed. The ascribed status of the caste system, where you were born in a particular caste, you cannot change your caste, that still existed. But the caste system never got disintegrated, and neither it got disappeared, but only some modification appeared. For example, occupational choices were relaxed. So one was free to take up occupation depending on the skill or aptitude or the educational background the person had. It was not so as it was pre-independent India or even before British India, where the son had to follow the father's occupation. It was no more there in the modern India. That is after independence. Then there was disappearance of caste panchayats. That also you have to mention. The caste panchayats played a very, very important role during the pre-independent India. So now they kind of lost their hold on the Indian system. Okay. Now we move on to the next question. Write a short note on the concept of dominant class. So I hope you remember what the dominant caste was. It was from the whose idea was this? Whose concept was this? This concept was given by M.N. Srinivas, and he talked about a particular caste being dominant in a particular area when it exceeded in a number. It was the largest numbered caste in that particular area. So that became dominant, and there were some features also of dominance. So that also you have to remember. But again, just see how many marks are allotted for that question. Just explain that much. If it is 5 marks, only mention the features. If it is 10 marks, then you have to explain the features also. Now the next question is, define scheduled caste and explain the problems or disabilities of scheduled caste. So you have to see, this question has come very recently, and again it can be of 5 marks or 10 marks. So you have to define scheduled caste. Which word did it replace? So it replaced the word untouchables. How these low castes were addressed as. So it removed that word and it substituted the word untouchable. It was another word that was used for this caste was depressed caste. And then Simon Commission gave this word scheduled caste, and it came into force by the Government of India Act of 1935. So what are the problems related to scheduled caste? So you have to categorize the entire problem into 3 points, which were social disability, economic disability, religious disability. So again take the explanation according to the marks allotted. Then the 7th question is, explain the problems of other backward classes. So if it is of 5 marks, just briefly explain. First you have to define what are the other backward classes, and then what kind of category it was. It was an indefinite abstract category, all that you have to write. Unorganized category, then it is based on economic backwardness, educational and social backwardness, and they are politically unorganized. Then next question is, list out the criteria of backwardness according to Mandal Commission. So you have to mention the criteria. In that you have to take the calculations also, briefly explain, and briefly explain under the headings of as they are given: social, educational criteria and economic criteria. Then comes, it is a very important question again, write a short note on creamy layer. So you have to first mention this word given by, this concept given by which committee? Satyanathan committee. Which year? 1971, and it referred to the wealthier caste, the wealthier group in the other backward classes. So they were excluded from the group of beneficiaries, those who were taking the benefits or reservations on account of being backward from the government. So, this creamy layer was removed because they were already well placed in the society, but still they were in the backward classes. However, they did not require the benefits or reservations given by the government. Then the 10th question talks about briefly explain the changing concept of a tribe. So, again if it is of 5 marks, you have to just mention and just briefly explain all those 5 points which are tribes are homogeneous self-contained units, and then tribe as political division. So, briefly you do not go into detail, you do not explain all the 3 political divisions in great detail, just a brief mention of the word, how it has come from tribus. And then tribe as a race. So, again this tribe as a race is a very big point. If it is only of 5 marks, you do not have to get into the detail, you just have to mention how tribes are divided into different zones based on their races, and just briefly mention the races. Then tribe as scheduled tribe. So, what is the criteria of describing a tribe as a scheduled tribe? Okay, now let us go to the next question, which is explain the problems of scheduled tribes. So, it is a long question. If it is 10 marks, then you have to explain it, not get into too much of detail, still explain give the details. So, what are those points? First is geographical distancing, that is the problem of scheduled tribes. Then cultural problem, again you have to mention what are the cultural problems, and then social problems and economic problems. So, economic problems can come separately also as a 5 mark question. So, here because economic problems you have another different sub points also. So, under that you have to explain those 4 points. What are those? Alienation of tribal land to non-tribals, then the problem of indebtedness, then the problem of forestry exploitation, and then primitive methods of cultivation. So, these are the problems they are facing, which comes in the purview of economic problems of scheduled tribes. So, let us move on to the next question. Again it is a very important question. Discuss the 3 views or policies of tribal welfare. Recently it has come as a 5 marker. So, here you have to give the 3 views or policies of tribal welfare, I hope you remember. So, those are 3, the policy of assimilation, the first is the policy of isolation, then assimilation, and the policy of integration. So, under the policy of integration you may have to discuss, tribal Panchshila, and it can come as a separate question also of 5 marks, where you have to discuss all the 5 points given by Pandit Nehru. So, talk about tribal Panchshila as a separate question if it comes as a 5 marker. Let us go on to the next question. Explain the geographical distribution of Indian tribes. So, in geographical distribution we are talking about how we have divided the tribes into 3 zones. So, what are those 3 zones? North and northeast zone. There are different tribes in north and northeast zone. Please remember the names of those tribes. Then you have central zone tribes and then southern zone tribes. So, you have to remember the name and you have to give the name of these 3 zones. Then next question is explain in detail the backwardness class committees of Karnataka. So, it can be of 5 marks, it can be of 10 marks. So, again you have to see how many marks are allotted. Again it has come very recently. So, you have to mention all those 4 committees, which are Naganna Gowda Commission, then LG Havanur Commission, then Venkataswamy Commission and Chinnappa Reddy Commission. Now, let us come to 1 mark questions. So, these are very basic questions. Who wrote People of India, this book? So, Herbert Risley. Who wrote History of Caste in India? S.V. Katkar. Then who wrote Caste in India? J.H. Hutton. Who wrote Caste and Race in India? G.S. Ghurye. How is the word caste derived? It is derived from the Spanish or Portuguese word casta, which means breed or race. Okay, mention any one characteristic of caste system. So, you remember those 6 characteristics, you can mention any one. So, here it has been mentioned as the first characteristic, it is based on the segmental division of society. Next question, mention any one factor that has brought changes in the caste system in the pre-independent period. So, here we have taken English education. You can talk about the universal legal system also, you can talk about industrial society also, all those points that are mentioned there, you can take up any one point and can explain them. You do not have to explain, just mention it, or maybe one line you can write. Then mention any one legislation that has brought changes in the caste system during pre-independent period or British rule. So, we have taken this particular act, the Caste Disability Removal Act of 1850. Now, who is the founder of Brahmo Samaj? Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Please learn these founders of various missionaries and social reform movements. Who is the founder of Prarthana Samaj? Justice M.G. Ranade. Then who is the founder of Arya Samaj? Swami Dayananda Saraswati. Who is the founder of Divine Life Society? Maharishi Aurobindo Ghosh. Who founded the Theosophical Society? Madam Blavatsky and Colonel Olcott. Who introduced the concept of dominant caste? M.N. Srinivas. Who coined the term scheduled caste? Okay, alternatively, in which commission the term scheduled caste has been used for the first time? So, you have to mention Simon Commission. Who introduced the term Harijana? It was used by Gujarati saint Narasimha Mehta. Generally, people mistake it for Mahatma Gandhi, but this term was introduced by this saint Narasimha Mehta. Who popularized the term Harijan? Yes, it was popularized by Mahatma Gandhi. Who called tribals as Girijana? Again, Mahatma Gandhi. Who called tribals as backward Hindus? G.S. Ghurye. According to which article, President has the power to recognize tribal as scheduled tribes? So, this is the article, Article 342, which enables the President of India to ascribe this particular title of scheduled tribe to any particular tribe based on certain criteria. Who advocated the policy of isolation? It was J.H. Hutton and Verrier Elwin. These are the people who talked about creating national parks for them. Now, who advocated the policy of assimilation? G.S. Ghurye. Who advocated the policy of integration? Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Who wrote the book People of India? Herbert Risley. Here he talked about the caste. Who wrote the book The Philosophy of NEFA, that is North East Frontier Agency? So, the answer is Verrier Elwin. Which was the first backward class commission of India? It was called Kaka Saheb Kalelkar Commission. It was the first backward class commission of India. Which was the second backward class commission of India? It was the Mandal Commission, founded by B.P. Mandal. Who was the chairman of the first backward class commission of India? Kaka Saheb Kalelkar. Who was the chairman of second backward class commission of India? B.P. Mandal. In which year Prajamitra Mandali was established? 1917. Remember, it was in Karnataka. It was first time all the caste got together and even the Muslims got together to advocate their rights, to ask for their rights, and then this they formed this particular Mandali, Prajamitra Mandali. Which was the first backward class commission of Karnataka? It was Naganna Gowda Commission. It will be good if you can mention the year also. Who was the chairman of the first backward class committee of Karnataka? Dr. Naganna Gowda. Name any two tribes of the southern zone. So, there are many you can mention, we have just took up these: Irula, Akipiki, etc. What is social capital? So, this is also a very important question, because the entire chapter is based on this particular concept of social capital. So, social capital is the networks of contacts of social association one has in the society. So, it is a part of social resource. So, remember that particular concept of social resource, and there are 3 social resources. Out of them, one is social capital. So, what are the other 2 social resources? Please check for yourself. Next is define prejudices. So, what are the prejudices? These are the preconceived opinion or attitude held by the members of one group towards another. Now, who is the present chairman of Permanent Backward Class Commission of Karnataka? So, the answer is Shri H. Kantaraj. Next question: which state has highest number of scheduled tribes? The answer is Madhya Pradesh with 23.27%. Next, which state has the highest percentage of scheduled tribes? It is Mizoram, 94.75%. Now, we come to the 2 markers, 2 mark questions. So, state any 2 forms of social resources. So, again you have to mention, just mention the names with little one example maybe you can give. So, these are the 3, you can mention any 1 or 2, sorry, you have to mention 2: economic capital, cultural capital, or social capital. Next question is, give the meaning of social inequality, or what do you mean by social inequality? Again a very, very important question, because again your entire chapter is based on this word, social inequality. So, the answer is pattern of unequal access to social resources are commonly called social inequality. And little explanation is also given. People often face discrimination and exclusion based on their gender, religion, ethnicity, language, caste, and disability. So, the extra point is also given. Often these ideas reflect prejudices. Prejudices refer to preconceived notions or attitude held by the members of one group towards the other. So, although it is a 2 mark question, but you can just briefly mention the important links that will give you a clear picture of the answer. What is social exclusion? Next question. Social exclusion refers to the ways in which individuals may become cut off from their full involvement in the wider society. So, the social exclusion can be defined as a situation in which multiple deprivations prevent individuals from participating in important activities. So, extra point given here is these socially excluded individuals might be unable to find work or actively participate in the society. That is why they are excluded. How is the term caste derived? The term caste is derived from the Spanish or Portuguese word casta, which means breed or race. So, the Portuguese applied the term to the classes of people in India known by the name of jati. So, remember that point, jati and casta, they have tried to find a similarity. So, here you can just observe only 2 lines are given. So, for 2 marker do not go beyond 2 to 3 lines maybe. Mention any one definition of caste. So, there were various definitions given by eminent sociologists also, and here they have taken certain this particular definition by Herbert Risley. So, remember the book that he wrote, The People of India. Here he defined caste as a collection of families or a group of families bearing a common name, claiming a common descent from a mythological ancestor, human or divine, professing to follow the same hereditary calling and regarded by those who are competent to give an opinion as forming a single homogeneous community. So, we have explained these definitions well. You can if anything you find problematic here, you can go back to the first part of the lesson. There we had explained these definitions also. Next one is S.V. Kathkar's definition in his book History of Caste of India. A caste is a group having 2 characteristics. Membership is confined to those who are born of members. and the members are forbidden by an inexorable social law to marry outside the group. Only endogamy is permitted. So, this is another definition. Then the very, very important definition by M. N. Srinivas, as we had already discussed, that he was considered to be the pioneer of the caste system, Indian caste system. So, he talked about the caste as hereditary, endogamous and usually localized group having traditional association with an occupation and a particular position in a local hierarchy of castes. Relation between castes is governed by the concept of pollution and purity, and generally maximum commensality occurs within the caste. Another definition by J. H. Hutton. He had described the caste structure in his book Caste in India. Hutton held that the central feature of the caste system was endogamy, and around this fact are built up the various restrictions and taboos. So, interaction must not violate these restrictions placed on various castes. So, another important feature of the caste system as seen by Hutton was the taboo on taking cooked food from the castes, any caste but their own caste. So, you cannot take cooked food from any other caste. So, let us move to the next question. Mention any two characteristics of a caste system. So, it is based on a segmental division of society and it puts restriction on the occupation. So, out of 6 you have to mention only 2. What do you mean by endogamy? It is a custom of marrying only within the limits of a local community, caste, clan or tribe. Then they have given an example also. It is good to give an example. A Vokaliga marrying a person belonging only to Vokaliga community. A Lingayat marrying a person belonging only to the Lingayat community. So, the next question is, mention any 2 factors that have brought changes in the caste system in the pre-independent period, that is British period. So, again you can mention any 2 factors: English education, introduction of universal legal system, impact of social reform movements, and all those 6 points you can mention any 2. Mention any 2 legislations that have brought changes in the caste system during the pre-independent period of British rule. So, you have to mention any 2. So, we have given you 3 here: the Caste Disability Removal Act of 1850, the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856 and the Special Marriage Act of 1872. So, these were the acts which actually removed the say that again. Next question is, mention any 2 legislations that have brought changes in the caste system during pre-independent period or British rule. So, out of many you can mention 2. So, the Caste Disability Removal Act of 1850, the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856 and the Special Marriage Act of 1872. Now, let us move on to the next question. Mention any 2 social reform movements that brought changes in the caste system. So, Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission, any other 2 you can mention. Mention any 2 changes in the caste system that have come after the independence. So, here you can mention freedom to choose occupation and relaxing endogamy. We had taken some examples also that endogamy is not so rigidly practiced nowadays as it was practiced earlier. Next question, define the concept of a dominant caste. So, here you must write M. N. Srinivas's name, and M. N. Srinivas introduced the concept of dominant caste. According to him, a caste is dominant when it preponderates numerically over the other castes, when it also wields preponderant economic and political high ritual status in the local caste hierarchy. So, this was one definition given by M. N. Srinivas about the dominant castes. Mention any 2 dominant castes of Karnataka, Vokaligas and Lingayats. Write Majumdar's definition of scheduled castes. So, D. N. Majumdar used the term scheduled caste to refer to the untouchable castes who suffer from various social and political disabilities, and many of which are traditionally prescribed and socially enforced by the higher castes. Next, write any two problems or disabilities of scheduled castes. So, out of 3 you can mention any 2: social disability, economic disability and religious disability. Next question, mention any 2 determinants of dominant caste. So, you can mention these: sizable amount of land and that it enjoys economic and political power. Please explain this. Sizable amount of land meaning that they have a good amount of land with them. So, they may be called a dominant caste of that area, and it enjoys economic and political power also. Define tribe. So, a social group with a definite area, dialect, similar culture and social organization is called a tribe. So, again some examples are given here: Soligas, Kurumbas, Akkipiki, etc. are some of the tribes that are found in Karnataka. Next question, mention any 2 changing concepts of tribe. So, here there are 4 points. Out of that you can take any 2. Tribe can be considered as a political division, it can be considered as a race. So, whatever you have to mention and just give one example. Next is name any 2 tribes mentioned in Vedic literature. So, you have many tribes again mentioned there, you mention any 2: Bharatas, Bhils, Kolas, Matsyas, etc. Next question, what do you mean by race? So, race is used to designate a category of persons whose similar characteristics could be attributed to a common descent. That is, they are coming from a common ancestor. The tribes in India broadly belong to 3 stocks, namely Negritos, Mongoloids and Mediterranean. Next question, mention any 2 geographical zones of Indian tribes. So, they are the north and northeastern zone, the central zone and the southern zone. Remember, you have to mention only 2 and it will be good if you can again give some examples. Next is mention any 2 tribes of the north and northeastern zone. So, here you give example: Khasi, Naga, Garo or any other 2 that you can mention. Mention any 2 tribes of central zone. So, again you have to mention any 2 tribes: Santhals, Bhils, Gonds. Mention any 2 tribes of the southern zone or state any 2 scheduled tribes of Karnataka. So, here we can see Erular, Sholaga, Kurumba or Akkipiki. Mention any 2 tribes of the central zone. So, amongst these Santhal, Bhils and Gonds. Mention any 2 tribes of the southern zone or any 2 scheduled tribes of Karnataka, you can take any 2 of them. Then mention any 2 tribes of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Jaravas and Onges, and mention any 2 problems of scheduled tribes. So, out of these 3 you can take any 2. Mention any 2 economic problems of scheduled tribes, then problem of indebtedness, primitive methods of cultivation, there are 4, you can take any 2. Mention the 3 views or policy of tribal welfare, again mention the 3. What is tribal Panchshila? Again you have to write all the 5 principles and it was advocated by Pandit Nehru. Define backward classes or caste, or who are backward class, or define other backward classes or castes. So, there can be a variation in the question, you please understand the question and then you attempt it. A caste is said to be backward. Backward. Define backward class or caste, or who are the backward class, or define other backward classes or castes. They all mean the same. The caste is said to be backward if it comprises of non-untouchables, lower and intermediary castes who were traditionally engaged in agriculture, animal husbandry and handicrafts or services. So, non-untouchable is important, because if they are untouchables, they will be put into the scheduled caste. The OBCs do not constitute a homogeneous category. The other backward classes are not classes at all, but group of communities. The OBCs constitute 51% of the total population of the country. Next, mention any two problems of other backward classes. So, out of 4 you can mention economic backwardness, educational and social backwardness, or any the other 2 also you can mention. Give any 2 criteria of backwardness. We can here talk about Kalelkar Commission and their criteria: low level in caste hierarchy and lack of advancement. And Mandal Commission, then you have to mention social, education and economic criteria with the calculations. Little, because it is only 2 marker. Mention any 2 criteria used by Mandal Commission to decide backwardness. So, out of these 3 you can use any 2 criteria. State or name any 2 backward class commissions in India. Again you have Kalelkar Commission or Mandal Commission. What do you mean by creamy layer? So, you define creamy layer is the term used to refer the relatively forward and better educated members of other backward classes, and this term was first coined by Satyanathan Committee in the year 1971. Mention any 2 backward class commissions of Karnataka. So, out of these 4 you can mention any 2, and it is good to mention the year also. State any 2 scheduled caste of Karnataka. Again from these you can mention any 2. How many castes and tribes are enlisted in Karnataka as SCs and STs? So, there are 101 SCs and 51 STs in Karnataka. So, now come to the fill in the blanks from chapter 2. So, we have unequal distribution of the ways to get the social resources is called social inequality. The term caste is originated from the Spanish and Portuguese word casta, which means race. The Hindu Widow Remarriage Act was enacted in the year 1856. The Hakipiki tribe belongs to the southern zone. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru advocated the principles of tribal Panchshila. Now, match the following. So, you can see how they are matched. Match it with the list. With this, we come to an end of this entire chapter, and we have revised it also, second chapter. So, I hope you have got a good clarity on the concepts mentioned in the chapter. But as I always say, you have to go through the chapter yourself and try to understand it. So, at the end of it, I would again appeal to you, it is not only about reading the chapter. You see the concepts, how many concepts you can see all around you, because this is sociology, it is all around you. And just look into yourself also, how many inequalities you also harbor within yourself, how many prejudices are there within in your ideas also. Think about all these things and study the chapter well, take care of yourself till the time we see you in the next chapter. Till then, Om Sai Ram.